Arthur's house felt too big now. Empty. Just a year ago, it had buzzed with laughter, Mary's bright voice filling every room. Now, only the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall broke the silence. He missed her terribly. He was a kind man, Arthur was, always ready to lend a hand. But since Mary passed, bills piled up, and his small pension wasn't enough. The garden, once Mary's pride, was overgrown. The paint peeled on the front porch. He was lonely, too. The evening stretched on forever, filled with memories and a gnawing emptiness. He'd always believed in helping those less fortunate. It was how he and Mary lived. He remembered her words, "Even the smallest kindness can make a world of difference, Arthur." Now, staring at the faded photos on the mantelpiece, he wondered if he could still live up to her example, even when he felt so lost himself. Little did he know, a knock on his door would soon test his kindness in ways he never imagined. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as Arthur was attempting to fix a leaky faucet. He wiped his hands on his worn overalls and shuffled to the door. Standing there was a young woman, her face pale and etched with worry. Beside her stood a little girl, no older than 5, clutching a worn teddy bear. "Excuse me, sir," the woman said, her voice barely a whisper. "My name is Sarah, and this is my daughter, Lily. We're in a bit of a bind." Arthur noticed Sarah's swollen belly beneath her thin coat. She looked exhausted, and Lily's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. He could see the desperation in their faces. "Our car broke down a few miles back," Sarah continued, "and we've been walking ever since. I don't know anyone around here, and, well, I'm expecting, and we have nowhere to go." She hesitated, then added, "I know it's a lot to ask, but is there any chance you could help us?" Arthur's heart went out to them immediately. Arthur hesitated only for a moment. Mary would have opened the door without a second thought. "Of course," he said, his voice a little rough with emotion. Come in, come in. You both must be freezing." He ushered them into the warm kitchen, the smell of simmering soup still lingering in the air. He pulled out 2 chairs. "Sit down, rest yourselves. I'll make you both something warm to drink." As he busied himself with the kettle, he couldn't help but feel a stirring of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. Maybe, just maybe, he could help these 2 lost souls. He had a spare room upstairs, dusty and unused since Mary's passing. It wasn't much, but it was a roof over their heads. And perhaps, he thought, their presence would fill the emptiness that had been haunting him. "You can stay here, at least for a little while," he said, turning to Sarah. "Until you get back on your feet." The first few weeks were surprisingly harmonious. Lily, with her bright eyes and infectious giggle, brought a lightness back into Arthur's life that he hadn't realized he was missing. He'd read her stories, helped her with her drawings, and even attempted to teach her how to play checkers, a game she quickly mastered, much to his amusement. Sarah, in turn, proved to be a helpful and considerate guest. She kept the house tidy, helped with the cooking, and even started tending to Mary's neglected garden. Arthur found himself looking forward to mealtimes, filled with conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the silent meals he'd grown accustomed to. He felt like he had a family again. He even started sleeping better, the weight of loneliness lifting slightly from his shoulders. It seemed like fate had brought them together, a perfect solution to everyone's problems. He felt grateful and happy, maybe for the first time since Mary's passing. But beneath the surface of this newfound happiness, small cracks began to appear. Arthur noticed Sarah often seemed distracted, her eyes darting nervously around. She'd spend hours on her phone, whispering into the receiver, always stepping outside to take the calls. When he asked who she was talking to, she'd become evasive, offering vague answers about old friends or job opportunities. One night, Arthur woke to find Sarah gone. Lily was asleep in her bed, but Sarah was nowhere to be found. He waited anxiously, his heart pounding in his chest, until she finally returned just before dawn, offering a mumbled apology about having to take care of something. He tried to shake off his unease, attributing it to his overactive imagination, but a seed of doubt had been planted. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was hiding something. Something big. One evening, Arthur was watching the local news. The anchor was reporting on a series of break-ins that had been plaguing the town. Police are urging residents to be vigilant, the anchor said, as the suspect remains at large. The perpetrator is described as a young woman, possibly traveling with a child. Arthur absently listened, his mind still preoccupied with Sarah's strange behavior. He glanced at the screen, but the grainy security footage of the suspect didn't register at first. He was too busy thinking about Sarah's reluctance to talk about her past, her hushed phone calls, her late-night disappearances. Then, something clicked. He rewound the broadcast, his heart beginning to pound in his chest. The woman in the security footage. The way she moved, the way she held herself. It was eerily familiar. Could it be? He tried to dismiss the thought as absurd, but the seed of suspicion had taken root, and it was growing rapidly. A chilling realization began to dawn on him. A few days later, a package arrived for Sarah. Arthur, retrieving it from the porch, noticed it was heavy and oddly shaped. Sarah was out, taking Lily to the park, so he placed it on the kitchen table. Curiosity gnawed at him. He knew he shouldn't, but he couldn't resist. When he was sure no one was around, he carefully opened the package. Inside, nestled amongst layers of newspaper, was a large sum of cash, neatly bundled. And beneath the money, glinting in the dim light, was a handgun. Arthur's breath caught in his throat. He slammed the box shut, his hands trembling. The news report, Sarah's secretive behavior, the money, the gun, it all added up to one terrifying conclusion. Sarah wasn't just down on her luck. She was a criminal. He felt betrayed, foolish, and utterly terrified. What had he gotten himself into? And, more importantly, what was he going to do? When Sarah and Lily returned, Arthur tried to act normal, but his hand still trembled slightly as he helped Lily with her coat. He watched Sarah carefully, his eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. As soon as Lily was distracted with a drawing, Arthur confronted Sarah. There was a package, he said, his voice low and strained. I opened it. Sarah's face paled. You what? She whispered, her eyes wide with panic. The money, the gun. Sarah, what's going on? She backed away from him, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I can explain, she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Explain what? Explain how you're a thief. How you've been using me. How you've put Lily in danger. Arthur's voice rose with each question, fueled by a mixture of anger and fear. The dream of a happy family shattered before his eyes, replaced by a harsh and terrifying reality. He deserved an explanation, and Lily deserved protection. Sarah finally broke down, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she sobbed. I didn't want to involve you. She confessed everything. Her husband had been a gambler, leaving her with nothing but debts and a young child to care for. Desperate, she'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, agreeing to participate in the robberies to pay off his debts and provide for Lily. Each successful robbery only dug her deeper into the criminal underworld. She never wanted Lily to know about her life, or be put in danger. She had planned on running away with the money, starting a new life far away from the city. She had hoped to provide Lily with a normal life. Arthur listened in stunned silence, the weight of her confession heavy on his heart. He saw the desperation in her eyes, the love she had for her daughter, but he couldn't condone her actions. He felt torn between his compassion for Sarah and his moral obligation to do what was right. Arthur's mind reeled, imagining Sarah's life. He pictured her in a dingy apartment, bills piling up, Lily's innocent eyes looking up at her, hungry. He saw Sarah's desperation, the impossible choices she faced. He imagined her first robbery. The fear, the adrenaline, the guilt. The memory of her husband's gambling debts, the loan sharks threatening her and Lily. The flashbacks of her life were vivid and terrible. The first house she robbed, the terrified look on the owner's face. The feeling of disgust with herself afterward. She knew it was wrong, but what else could she do? Each robbery became easier, but the guilt never faded. She tried to justify it to herself, telling herself it was for Lily. But deep down, she knew she was spiraling out of control, trapped in a web of her own making. Arthur could almost feel her desperation, her fear, her love for her daughter. He realized she wasn't a monster, just a desperate mother trying to survive. He looked at Lily, happily coloring in her book, oblivious to the turmoil swirling around her. He couldn't bear the thought of her being separated from her mother, growing up in foster care. He knew what it was like to lose a parent, to feel that emptiness. But then he thought of the victims of Sarah's crimes. The fear, the violation, the loss. He thought of Mary, who always believed in doing what was right, no matter how difficult. He knew he couldn't simply ignore what Sarah had done. He had a responsibility to the community, to uphold the law. He wrestled with his conscience, pacing the floor late into the night. Could he turn her in? Could he betray her trust, even after everything? He felt a deep conflict within himself, a war between his heart and his head. Compassion warred with justice. He was trapped. Just as Arthur had reached a painful decision to call the police, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder and louder. Before he could react, police cars surrounded the house, their flashing lights illuminating the night sky. "This is the police. Come out with your hands up," a voice boomed through a megaphone. Arthur's heart leaped into his throat. He looked at Sarah, her face pale and drawn. "Someone must have tipped them off," she whispered, her voice trembling. The front door splintered open, and armed officers stormed inside. Lily screamed, clinging to Arthur's leg. The house was filled with chaos and shouting. Arthur raised his hands in surrender, trying to shield Lily from the scene. It seemed the decision had been made for him. He hadn't called the police, so it must have been an old partner of Sarah's, or another criminal trying to settle a score. In a moment of panic, Sarah grabbed Lily and tried to make a run for the back door. "We have to go," she shouted, her voice frantic. Arthur, despite the chaos, managed to intercept them. "Sarah, no. Don't make this worse," he pleaded, grabbing her arm gently. "It's over. Just surrender." "They'll take Lily away from me," she cried, her eyes filled with terror. "I can't let that happen." "They won't," Arthur promised, though he didn't know if it was true. "I'll make sure of it. But you have to stop running. It's the only way to protect her." He looked into her eyes, trying to convey the sincerity of his words. He could see the internal struggle in her face, the desperate need to protect her child warring with the hopelessness of her situation. He truly wanted to help. He knew if she surrendered, he could watch out for Lily. Sarah looked at Lily, her small face streaked with tears, clinging to Arthur's leg. She knew Arthur was right. Running would only make things worse, endangering Lily even further. It was the hardest decision she'd ever had to make, but she knew what she had to do. With a deep sigh, she released Lily's hand and raised her own hands in the air. "I surrender," she said, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "Just please, don't hurt my daughter." The officers cautiously approached her, handcuffing her and leading her away. Lily screamed, reaching for her mother, but Arthur held her tight, whispering soothing words in her ear. Sarah looked back at Lily, her eyes filled with love and regret. "I'm sorry," she mouthed, before being led out of the house. Arthur watched her go, his heart aching for both Sarah and Lily. He knew this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. After Sarah was taken away, social services arrived to take Lily into protective custody. Arthur argued with them, pleading to be allowed to keep her, but they explained that he wasn't a relative and couldn't be granted temporary guardianship without a proper investigation. Watching Lily being led away, clutching her teddy bear, broke Arthur's heart. The house felt even emptier than before, the silence deafening. He knew he had done the right thing, that Sarah needed to face the consequences of her actions. But it didn't make the pain any easier. He missed Lily's laughter, her bright eyes, her innocent questions. He spent the next few days contacting social services, undergoing background checks, and providing references. He was determined to get Lily back, to provide her with a stable and loving home, even if it wasn't the one she had before. He felt responsible for her now, a promise he silently made to Sarah as she was driven away. It took weeks of paperwork and interviews, but finally, Arthur was granted temporary guardianship of Lily. He was overjoyed to bring her home, filling the house with life again. He visited Sarah in jail every week, bringing her updates on Lily and assuring her that he was taking good care of her. Sarah was grateful, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. She knew Lily was in good hands. Arthur became a father figure to Lily, reading her stories, helping her with her homework, and tucking her into bed each night. He enrolled her in school, made sure she had new clothes, and celebrated her birthdays with small parties. He introduced her to Mary's favorite flower, the daffodil, and they planted them together in the garden. He provided her with stability, love, and a sense of belonging, things she desperately needed. He tried to be both her family, and keep Sarah's memory alive. The day of Sarah's trial arrived, casting a somber shadow over Arthur and Lily. He brought Lily with him, wanting her to see that even though her mother had made mistakes, she was brave enough to face the consequences. Sarah pleaded guilty to all charges, her voice filled with remorse. She spoke of her desperation, her fear, and her love for Lily. She apologized to the victims of her crimes, expressing her deep regret for the pain she had caused. She also apologized to Arthur, acknowledging the danger she had put him and Lily in, and thanking him for his kindness and support. She accepted her sentence without complaint, knowing that it was the price she had to pay for her actions. As she was led away, she looked at Lily and mouthed, "I love you," tears streaming down her face. Arthur squeezed Lily's hand, assuring her that everything would be all right. Despite everything, Arthur stepped forward to make a statement on Sarah's behalf. He spoke of her difficult circumstances, her desperation to provide for Lily, and her genuine remorse for her actions. He emphasized her love for her daughter and her willingness to surrender to protect her. "I know what Sarah did was wrong," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But I also know that she's not a bad person. She's a mother who made mistakes out of desperation. I believe she deserves a second chance." He asked the judge to consider her circumstances and her commitment to turning her life around when sentencing her. He hoped that his words would make a difference, that Sarah would be given a chance to redeem herself and reunite with Lily sooner rather than later. He believed in the power of redemption, in the possibility of change, and he hoped the judge would too. He knew Sarah was a good person at heart. Years passed. Lily grew into a bright and confident young girl, excelling in school and participating in local theater productions. Arthur proudly watched her, his heart swelling with love. The day Sarah was released from prison was filled with anticipation and nervous excitement. Arthur drove Lily to the prison gates, where they waited anxiously. When Sarah finally emerged, looking thinner but with a hopeful glint in her eyes, Lily ran to her, throwing her arms around her in a tearful embrace. With Arthur's support, Sarah found a job at a local bakery, working hard to rebuild her life and earn back Lily's trust. They moved into a small apartment together, just a few blocks from Arthur's house, allowing him to remain a constant presence in their lives. Sarah was determined to make amends for her past mistakes and provide Lily with a better future. She vowed to never put her daughter in that situation again. Arthur, Sarah, and Lily formed an unconventional but loving family. They celebrated holidays together, shared meals, and supported each other through thick and thin. Arthur found a renewed sense of purpose in his life, no longer lonely or lost. He became a grandfather figure to Lily, a mentor to Sarah, and a friend to both. He learned that family wasn't always about blood, but about love, loyalty, and forgiveness. He discovered that even after loss and betrayal, it was possible to find happiness again. Mary would have been proud of him. Sarah, in turn, found redemption and a chance to rebuild her life. She was grateful for Arthur's unwavering support and Lily's unconditional love. She knew she could never fully erase her past, but she was determined to create a better future for herself and her daughter. She was forever grateful for the second chance. They had become each other's family. Arthur often sat on his porch, watching Lily and Sarah laugh as they tended to Mary's garden, now bursting with life and color. He reflected on the journey they had all taken, the twists and turns, the heartaches and triumphs. He realized that life was messy, unpredictable, and full of complexities. People made mistakes, sometimes terrible ones, but everyone deserved a chance at redemption. Compassion, forgiveness, and love were the most powerful forces in the world, capable of healing even the deepest wounds. He learned that judging others was easy, but understanding them was far more rewarding. He realized that kindness, even in the face of betrayal, could create miracles. And most importantly, he learned that second chances were not just possible, but essential for growth, healing, and the creation of a better world. He smiled, knowing Mary would be proud. He had opened his heart, and in doing so, he had found a family, a purpose, and a love he never thought possible.